You're listening to the Survivor Sweat Podcast with Mike Buckmiller and Russell Rosenblum. If you're looking for strategy articles and just about everything Survivor, head to survivorsweat.com. Now, let's get to it.
All right, here we go. Survivor Sweat Pod out, episode number 4. And we're official now. We're actually in a studio.
Well, yeah, because we didn't take Denver this week, so.
Oh, Denver. Denver's just, yeah. We'll discuss that at a later time. My name is Mike Buckmiller, and this is Russell Rosenblum, my partner in crime. As we've mentioned on the prior pods, we're last year's co-winner, as we brought the infamous here, the big check.
The big check, yes.
You know, you always hear about, like, you can't, one day you want to have the big check, and we got the big check.
The little check was better, the one that went to the bank. I like that one more.
Yeah, that was big.
That was good. All right.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, absolutely. So it's cool to be in the studio here. Makes it official, if you will. And as you can see, we got our nice winner's jackets, thanks to Mr. Derek Stevens. Funny story about that. So when we were at the actual ceremony, when we got the big check, we noticed that the Millions winners were getting, they were getting the jackets. And everything was so fast and furious. And I remember looking at you and going, wait, where's our jacket? And I remember reading on the fine print on when you signed up on the entries. And I thought when you won Survivor, you got the jacket as well. And so I went to Derek and I go, where's our jackets? And he goes, oh.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, those are only for the Millions. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. And he goes, well, I don't know. Do you want one? And I was like, hell yeah, I want one. Yeah, we won this dang thing. And I think truth be told is they had never had an individual winner.
Right.
And they never had only 2 winners.
Yeah.
So I don't think he thought it was possible.
Well, he had concerns there could be, 50 or 100 people, how many, and then even you have partners, it could be 500 jackets, like how many are you giving out?
Exactly.
But fortunately, like most people do, he happened to have his tailor 20 feet away. And so Taylor was able to come over. It was pretty cool. It was like, and he came over and actually fitted us right there. And
right then and there.
I've had a lot of clothes tailored. This is probably the only thing I've had fit in like one fitting. Was crazy.
Yeah, it was great. It was really good. I
can't say I wear it very often. I don't know exactly where I'm going to wear it.
No.
It's still fun to have.
Yeah, they had a champions dinner not too long ago, and there was a past Survivor champion, and he was like, where did you get the jacket? He goes, how did you get one? And I go talk to Mr. Stevens. And Derek said that he's changed the policy now.
Really?
And so now if you win Survivor, you can get a jacket.
All right.
But you purchase it yourself.
Okay, well, you can afford to purchase it yourself if you win Survivor.
Sure.
Unless
as long as you split it with 500 people.
You split it with 500 people, maybe not. All right. We should jump into something meaningful to people because I don't think everybody cares how much about our jacket.
Nobody cares about our jackets.
All right.
Okay. They actually just probably despise us.
All right. So
anyways,
are we still in Survivor? Do we still have some entries left? Or do
we are. We are still in.
Because we didn't take Denver. We avoided Denver this time.
Yeah.
That's good.
We also didn't take Jacksonville.
That is true. So we did some things right this week. Obviously, we were never taking Denver against Miami. No, but literally nobody took Denver against Miami, if I recall correctly.
No.
But we did. We had some agonizing decisions, and we did very intentionally avoid Jacksonville, primarily because we thought they were going to be very, very, very heavily taken. So when people always say, do you really put your money where your mouth is on the popularity issue? We really did, because we sat there and we were supposed to take a lot of Baltimore and Jacksonville. And then as you mostly dug in deeper on Baltimore, you were pretty concerned with their secondary, if I remember right, and how that game might actually play out. There were also some questions about weather over there. Now, the weather was not a factor, but I'm sure most of you know this, but if you don't, if they have real weather issues and the game gets pushed past like later than Tuesday, like into Wednesday, you don't survive. You're out.
Yeah,
so if they move this to like week 8 or something, you're out. So when we weighed everything there, we did still end up putting, I think, 1 entry on Baltimore as something of a hedge.
Yep.
But we did, the goal was to pick one team we wanted to avoid.
Yeah,
really.
That's correct.
And that was Jacksonville. And then we also ended up mostly avoiding Baltimore. we ended up with some picks on San Francisco, which, we normally avoid Thursday night games 2 weeks in a row. I think we've had Thursday night games.
Correct.
As one of our partners did point out, one of the advantages of a Thursday night game is at least if you have some entries that advance, you can gamble a little bit more on Sunday.
Yeah.
At least you've survived. Something is going to move forward.
Yeah.
So by the time the morning games ended and the afternoon games have started, and we're in Las Vegas, and we were actually going to the Raiders game. So as we're driving down there, we're listening to the Cowboys game in the car. Like, our morning is great. We think everything's going great. And then not so much.
Yeah, everything was going to plan in the morning. Not to beat a dead horse here, but we definitely avoided Jacksonville, and we definitely avoided, for the most part, Baltimore. We actually we guesstimated what the percentages would be. We weren't exactly sure, but we thought they'd land between 50 and 55% would be on those two teams. So that was definitely an area we wanted to avoid for sure. And so driving down to the game, we thought we were in really good shape. Here we are sitting here with, Dallas versus the Arizona Cardinals, and lo and behold.
Yeah, again, not so great. Now, some people may ask, because we brought up a couple times in the pod before about, if you're going to take Dallas, you better have a plan, because, you've got Thanksgiving coming up, and there are a couple other teams you can take on Thanksgiving. One of them now looks to be Miami, if I remember right, versus the Jets, where with Aaron Rodgers, it was less clear. But again, to be clear, it's not like we took all of our entries and put them on Dallas. So there would be some entries that didn't have Dallas anymore and other ones that did. Although
that's correct.
Technically now, all of our entries have Dallas left.
Yeah.
The ones we've taken are gone.
Yeah. Quick back of the napkin numbers here. We're actually in a better spot this year than we were last year. At this spot last year, we were 0.1% of equity of this pool.
That's pretty low.
And this year, we're 0.3%. So
That's 3 times as good.
3 times as good, yeah. So talk about the straight-up carnage. We mentioned on the last pod, we thought there would be a loss or two amongst the big favorites. Sure thing, it happens. 3,437 hit the skids. Almost 60% of the remaining field was clipped in week 3. 2,479 of the 9,267 remain. So 73.25% of the entire pool has been eliminated through week 3. So I looked back to last year, and through 3 weeks, 75%.
So it's basically the same.
Yeah, it's not far off pace. We're splitting hairs here. And that also includes the 8-0 picks, which everybody likes to talk about. Either way, and we were involved in the Thursday night game with the 49ers. And not to be results oriented, but we had a partner that thought we should take more.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't reach out to him. He told me to take more right after we had our picks in. We had discussed that we were going to put 2 in. I, at the last minute, decided to make it 3. One of our other partners did say we should have put more in there. And obviously, he was right, results-oriented too. He was right. But when we really started looking at Sunday, it became more self-evident we should have put more on San Francisco, despite the fact, not just because they won. The winning was the least of it.
Yeah. And the more data I was pulling up on the Ravens led to that.
And that's exactly right. It's once and we hadn't totally decided yet we were avoiding the Ravens. We did already know we wanted to avoid Jacksonville. But once we decide we're now avoiding the Ravens too, you kind of look up and go, well, now who are we actually taking, right? So we end up somewhat heavy on Dallas, and we ended up with a pick on I pulled a pick off Dallas at the last minute. We put on Seattle.
Correct.
Just as a hedge. We took 2 off Dallas. We took 1 and put it on Seattle, the other one on Baltimore, right? Baltimore lost, Seattle won. So, and we did that as a hedge just in case there were a few really major upsets. At least we have something that advances there.
Definitely mitigates the risk for sure. There was I was trolling the X handle on Circa Sports, and there was a question on there, and it said, "Why don't they reveal the Thursday selections after they're locked in?"
Yeah, that's a good question. Some people have talked about that. I mean, if that was the case, it really would give a tremendous edge to people that haven't put, that haven't put their picks in yet. Using a fairly extreme example, but just to paint a picture, if there were 100 entries left, 100 people left in this pool, and you learned on Thursday that 99 of those 100, well, if you learn 99 of those 100 lost, and you're the only one left, you can literally just pick the biggest chalk on the board. You don't have to worry about any favorite issues. True. You're going to win the entire pool if you have that knowledge. The other hand, if you know all 99 advanced, they've all got their picks in, right?
Yeah.
You now know who you can pick without any worries about popularity.
Yeah, that's true.
You can take a gamble and try to win the whole pool, but your entire strategy would change. Having knowledge of what picks are in is incredibly valuable. And this is the thing that, and we all trust rightfully so, I have no reason to not trust them, but the integrity of Circa.
Yeah.
That when they're getting these things, because some of these things do go in early and some people put them in close to the last minute. But I've never have any reason to believe Circa, does anything with that information, which is critical. And I would be concerned if I were doing a Survivor League with, just a random person for big dollars someplace, because if they're playing in it as well, they're going to have access to all those numbers.
Yeah.
And that would be concerning to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, good points. So Jacksonville goes down, Ravens go down, Cowboys go down. So, 3 of the 6 games we discussed went down. So interesting stuff. So on Survivor Sweat on the X handle, once the picks were revealed, we went on there and we popped some of our reasonings for why we got to the spots we got to. We guesstimated again 50 to 55% would be on Jacksonville, Baltimore. So we wanted to avoid those. And as we discussed last week with Buffalo, if we would have known in advance that 40% of the pool was going to be on Buffalo, we wouldn't have put our 5
we would
picks
have
there.
0 on Buffalo.
There's no
value.
In our reasoning, when we were having our discussion, that's exactly what we talked about, is if we truly believe this, then we cannot put 1 on Jacksonville.
Correct. Because at one point it was going to be 4, then 3, then 1, then it just became 0. And for clarity on something you just mentioned, right? So some people have asked me why it is we don't tell people who our picks are going to be ahead of time because, they're looking for guidance to watching the pod. Well, if and when we're no longer in the pool, I'm sure we'll be happy to say who we recommend you actually pick. But we're competing just like everybody else here, and we're out there trying to win again.
That's true.
And so it was a dilemma as to whether we'd even do the pod. What kind of information do we want to put out there? Because we are still competing.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of giving you a taste, and you can probably gauge from some of the things we say which directions we'll probably go in. But the other aspect there to keep in mind is that when we do reveal our selections, it's after Circa's closed.
Yeah.
So it's after 4 o'clock Pacific. But we are giving you our selections and our commentary before we actually do see the popularity results from Circa. So we could tell you we expect these to be 50%. You could look down. Like this week, you might say, oh, that was easy. They just read it. We didn't read it. This was our expectation. You could look down one day. We could say we expect it to be 50%. It might only be 20%. We could just be dead wrong. But we are putting that information out before we see the results at Circa, just after Circa's closed.
That's correct. Yeah, so once it closes at 4 o'clock, we got all our notes and we just pop on there and give you a little piece of our brain. And we could be right or we could be wrong. But this week we were dead on. And it felt great heading into the afternoon games.
It did. And even though you can look up and say, oh, you feel like you're right, but I mean, you had the Cowboys, they lost. I mean, other people had Jacksonville, they lost. What's the difference? The difference is the Cowboys had like 6% of the field on them.
Yeah.
Right. So even when they win with us, it's like 6% of the field advances, right? So it's not that crippling. If you win while you have Jacksonville and 40% advances with you, you don't really pick up any equity.
Yeah.
And I know I say this week in and week out, but that really is the element of Survivor. And we deal with it every week. Every week we have at least 1 or 2 of us in our group say, okay, well, I agree with all of this, but maybe this week we should just be conservative and take the popular team. We'll worry about it next week, right? You never know when that big upset's going to happen, and you need to just be avoiding the one that everybody has.
Yeah, absolutely. And just by digging down deep in the numbers, I knew quickly that we could not be concentrated on Baltimore. We did take a small position on them, but we definitely flipped from them. They just were not in a position to compete at Baltimore's normal level.
And some of that, unfortunately, we'll make some comments on that today, but some of that is difficult to know until Saturday, Sunday, and we can't do anything about Sunday. We got to have the picks in by Saturday, but it's tough. I mean, even you're waiting for Wednesday practices before you really know who's going to be playing. Yeah. And then sometimes Thursday, Friday, you get vets that don't come out and practice on Wednesday anyway. Yeah. So it's just often hard to tell. Obviously with the secondary issues, but then when the left tackle and the center's out, they're down to 1 running back, which they ended up losing. Melvin Gordon had to come in there. Their skill position guys, minus Flowers, were nicked up. They walked in there pretty beat up. They did. The part that really surprised me is I think I saw the Vegas line went from maybe 8 to 7.5. And, I give Vegas a lot of credit. Their lines are good. The guys are very good at what they do. It's it's just hard to imagine when you lost, I think they had 8 starters that were out, that you wouldn't see more than a half a point move. And I suppose it's because they really don't give any respect to the Colts for being very good. And even in our analysis, it wasn't that we thought the Colts were better than, the market said they were. It's just we thought that Baltimore was going to be worse.
This is true. Absolutely. We definitely agonized over that, but I think we made the right decision in the end. Again, not to be result-oriented. Now, we were willing to jump on the Chiefs here. We put a piece on the Chiefs. We thought the ownership was going to be lower than it was. It ended up 20%. We guesstimated maybe 8 to 10% max. So
something like that. Yeah.
In that example, we were off.
And I think it's what's one of the things that's very challenging about Circa when you're pulling numbers and trying to gauge popularity overall. There are groups out there that aggregate all the Survivor numbers. The problem is with Circa, you have to keep a pick for Thanksgiving, you have to keep a pick for Christmas Day. So all of these aggregators don't take that into account. So you have to sit there and say, okay, well, if some aggregator says 20% are going to take Dallas, in our pool it won't be 20 for sure because people are going to hold them. Is it going to be 12? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 8? And if it's whatever that number is, where are those picks moving? Where are they going?
Yeah.
They got to go somewhere, right? So are they going to go to the Chiefs? Are they going to go to the 49ers? Are they going to go to Baltimore, Seattle? And that's kind of the thing that's very tricky. You're constantly trying to figure out where those are going to move. And look, I mean, you can be great, you can be lucky, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're guessing. Somebody out watching this podcast right now, probably in Circa. And so I'm going to tell him, okay, it's going to be 20% on this team, and he's going to go, ha, 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 I'm going to move it to this other one.
Yeah.
Like they have complete control. We have no control. I mean, we're largely, they're educated guesses. They are educated, but they're also just guesses.
Correct. Absolutely. And with Thanksgiving specifically, I think we were comfortable moving off a little bit of, or we were more comfortable in taking Dallas because there's actually 4 games instead of 3. Because there's the Friday game, and so if you don't know that, there is an added game for Thanksgiving this year on Friday, and it's the Miami Jets game. So
there is, and look, the fear, and we've talked about this internally. I think we mentioned it on the pod once too. If Tua's been hurt a lot. If Tua gets hurt, it would be nice to have a second choice.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, of course, right now, again, it's sort of the irony of it all, if you will. We burned Dallas, which means we couldn't use them on Thanksgiving, except because they lost, all of our entries can still use Dallas on Thanksgiving, right? I mean, it's not a good thing, and yet psychologically, you're never going to wake up on Thanksgiving and go, I wish I had Dallas, because we still do, unless we burn them later, right?
Yeah.
But it's something to definitely remember that you do have that additional game and that you want to have multiple options. And again, the thing about this is, on Thanksgiving, I mean, I think you're going to have 60 or 70% of the people that have Dallas remaining just taking Dallas.
Correct.
So it's back to, do I want to take the popular team? And although I always say to avoid them, you do reach a point, like Christmas, there's only 3 games, right? If there are only 2 games, I mean, at some point, you're kind of forced, your hand's forced.
Yeah.
Unless you have, like I've said before, the stones to take the other side, right? If there was only 1 game and you knew everybody was taking Dallas, you're just supposed to take the dog, even if it's the Bears. Mm-hmm. Bears are pretty bad.
The Bears
I think the Bears could be worse than Denver, but that's kind of an open question.
We had that discussion after maybe week 1 or 2 about the misfires of the quarterback there and just not reading the field, not throwing the ball and not letting it go, and not sure what he's seeing. When you look at the all 22 and you're seeing the reads and you're seeing open receivers and he's just not pulling. Fields is not pulling the trigger.
He's not. I wish I had the person's name on X on Twitter now, and he's done some really great analysis specifically on Justin Fields, and he's been showing the all 22s. He's been doing film breakdown and just not understanding why Justin Fields isn't seeing some of the things that are out there. And the best conclusion is that, he's gun shy. He's had some rocky times, and he's just a little bit gun shy about pulling the trigger.
Yeah, definitely some regression. And as we discussed, we thought he was going to take another, a positive step this year. I think a lot of people were in that camp. We moved over. We took some Chiefs. Wasn't extremely happy about that when we saw the 20%, because the Chiefs are the best team for Christmas. They are the best selection. It is what it is. Minus injuries, things we don't know about. But if they stay healthy over there, they are the pick. So having them with 20% wasn't great, but we did survive and we did move on.
Right. The other hand is we could have taken more on Dallas instead of the Chiefs.
This is
right.
True.
And then they're all gone. And this is, if you do have multiple entries, this is always a question of how many of each team do you take? How much do you want to spread your risk? And there's some math out there you can do. There's things to try to figure out exactly what type of risk you should take. But there were people last year that took all their entries on one team. I thought that was very risky, but there is definitely a strategy to it. I mean, they're taking the risk that they're going to be knocked out, but if they make it deep, they probably have a pretty big advantage. On the other hand, if you do take, 5 or 6 teams, they're all favorites. If you're able to, if you have 5 or 6 entries, the chances of you being actually out of the pool are incredibly low.
Yeah.
In that 1 week, all 5 of them losing, it's like, teeny.
Yeah. Just because I'm neurotic, I did look through some of the entries, and there were several that like put everything on Jacksonville. Like ones that had 6, others had 5, others had 8, and they went for it.
Yeah. And I don't know, I bet you some of them are sick about it, and I bet you others are, okay, well, what's the difference? And, what's the difference if I get knocked out in week 3 or week 11?
Yeah.
You've got to win the whole thing. Yep. And it won't be over by week 11. You're going to make it to Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Speaking of entries list, I looked down at Browna and his week 3 picks. Now, Browna, for those of you that are just tuning in, he's the other guy with a giant check, but his doesn't say Jed. His doesn't say Jed. It says Brown A. Yeah, exactly. Alex Brown. He had 3 on the Chiefs, 2 on Jacksonville, and 1 on Dallas. So he is down to 3 entries that we know of course.
We know of.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know you've mentioned before, last year we won, our screen name was Jed, but we do have entries under another name, of course, as well.
We do. And I'm sure people will start to figure it out anyway as we, if we're telling them now how many picks we have and who we're picking, it wouldn't take a genius, but doesn't really matter either.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, so that was the recap. Moving on to this week.
Yep. Should we take a short break and then we'll move on to this week?
Sure, take a short break and then we will discuss week 4.
Week 4.
Time for a message from our sponsor. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the Survivor Sweat Podcast.
If you live out of state but want to enter any of the biggest football handicapping contests in Las Vegas, you've come to the right place. Football Proxy is the most professional proxy service in Las Vegas and can serve as your trusted proxy to enter your picks each week for the Super Contest, Circa Sports Millions, or Circa Survivor contests. What makes Football Proxy different from other proxies? Well, like other proxies, we have late selection deadlines and an easy-to-use web portal to submit your picks each week. But, unlike other proxies, we allow our customers to change their picks anytime before the pick deadline, which is crucial when gathering last-minute information. Ask another proxy if they allow you to make changes to your picks and see their reaction. It's what makes us the top-rated proxy service in Las Vegas. To get started, fill out the contact form and a representative will contact you to answer any questions and schedule an appointment. Then book your trip to Las Vegas and meet us at the designated casino to get signed up. Once the season starts, sweat the action all season long with your picks. Schedule an appointment today and compete against the world's best for your chance at millions.
On to week 4.
We survived for sure. So if we were to prognosticate our week 3 percentages, where are these equities going to land for our opponents and us?
So this is a good question. I mean, early looks, and again, this isn't taking into account Circa specifically, it's Survivor in general. Early popularity numbers are showing San Francisco around 36%, Kansas City at 19%, Philadelphia at 19%, and then there's a pretty big drop-off. Dallas, Chargers, Minnesota, 4, 5, 6% in that range. And so I don't know yet, as usual, I don't know yet where we're going to end up. And I said actually somewhat jokingly, and I was joking, and I'm nervous someone in our group may actually think we should take this team.
Don't say Denver.
This is probably the week that Denver finally wins.
Don't say Denver.
And so I can tell you, yes, it could change. I do not think we're taking Denver. We've been burned so bad by Denver. I mean, I don't think I want to go anywhere near them, which begs the psychological question that I asked you on the way over here. And I don't know the answer to this, right? Let's say we avoided Denver in weeks 1 and 2. Would we be more likely to take them now when we look up and go, we think it's a good matchup? We're only expecting 1 or 2% of people to be on them. Like it's a great popularity matchup. Or are we really able to separate and just look at this week in a vacuum and ignore weeks 1, 2, and last week having Miami drop 70 on them? I do think, it's easy to say Sean Payton won't let them lose 4 in a row. I mean, whatever. He's trying to win every game anyway.
Sure.
I don't know. This is going to show a lot. If they if they show up and get smoked by Chicago after letting Miami drop 70, I don't know.
Burger.
I don't know what
incredible.
they do. People should just be gone. I mean, that's where I look at that and I think that Denver is really at a crossroads. They're going to have to show up and show something in this game. Yet still, I don't think I have the stones to actually pull the trigger on Denver. We've lost probably half our entries or something this year on Denver between weeks 1 and 2.
Just agonizing. I'll definitely work the game and see what the numbers what they say. But
yeah, I'm hoping you don't get back to me with anything, good, bad, or otherwise. Like, I just don't hear about it. Just like I don't expect to hear about, Baltimore or something this week. Like, there are games I just don't expect to hear anything about. And that would be one. Miami Buffalo. I don't think anybody's touching that game in Survivor.
As of today, the Niners are 14-point favorites versus the Arizona Cardinals. Can they do it again? The Chiefs 9.5 at the Jets. What a situation over there. There was something we discussed internally was the friction between the offense and the defense, and now the coaching staff. And this is what you're hearing today.
It's getting worse.
Yeah, it's getting worse. And so I just don't know how long they can go with Wilson. If at all.
I don't know. And we literally did have this conversation on Sunday, right? And it was, and we all agreed, all of us were having this talk. Look, everybody says this quarterback's terrible, this quarterback's great, whatever. And I think we've talked about this in the past. I'm not sitting here and telling you that Zach is just absolutely terrible. I mean, again, is he one of the top 50 quarterbacks in the world? Maybe. He's probably one of the top 100 quarterbacks in the world.
No, his metrics are like...
I know, they showed he's actually the third worst of all time. I saw that down there. I can't remember who it was. Oh, it was Josh Rosen, I think, was the worst of all time when you looked at the metrics. But here's the thing about it. Regardless of whether you think he has hope or not, he clearly does not have hope in New York.
No.
The team has no confidence in him. The coaching staff has no confidence in him. The players, they don't want to, play with him, for him. He's not going to be a leader there.
Yeah.
And if I'm him, he can't be a leader. It's not a good spot. He needs to look someplace else.
And he looks like he's playing scared, and he doesn't want to make another mistake.
He's right. I mean, if that was you, you'd play scared too.
Yeah.
You got sit. They went out and got Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Right. And then they bring him in, and then you're sitting there, and then they're like, oh, crap, he's got to play. I mean, and New York, I'm from New York. That's a tough market. And so once they've lost faith in you there, man, it's hard to get it back. And so I just think that they need to move on. It doesn't mean that this guy's as bad as everybody says. He's performing very badly, but they need to move on. And it was funny because I had a couple of drinks, and I remember even saying, not seeing what, I have no idea this was going to come out. And I said, it's funny because I always see Kaepernick's name just like flopping around. And the thing that's crazy is I always thought he should have gotten another shot, despite the fact his last year was pretty bad. Because I think in the NFL, they really should just be picking up players based on their skill, not the rest of it should be kind of garbage. But I don't know if you saw this today. He came out today or yesterday or something.
Wrote a letter or something.
And he wrote a letter to the Jets, and he says, I think you should put me on the practice squad. And I'd even said when I said this on Sunday, even if I thought that before, I mean, how long has he been here? Like 5 or 6 years?
Way too long.
Like, I can't imagine. No. But how bad are the Jets that
he's writing a letter.
That even gets published, right? Like if I wrote a letter to the Jets and said I want to be in the practice squad, nobody's publishing the letter. Yeah. So it's I don't know what they're going to do in New York. It's a really tricky spot, and they've got a great defense, and I think their coach is good. Just some people are saying maybe he isn't. I think the coach is very good. I just think it's a tricky spot. They don't have a quarterback. They have no leader.
Apologetic for Wilson, and the defensive players are just not having it.
I know, but what's he supposed to do?
Yeah. No, he's just trying to support his guy.
Is he the GM over there or not? Is he coach and GM or just coach?
No.
Right. So then literally what's he supposed to do? Someone's got to get him a player.
Yeah. So Dallas -7 versus Pats in the Zeke revenge game.
So I'm going to remind you of something we talked about preseason when you're like, you know what, I think the Pats are going to be a lot better this year. I think Belichick has really fixed a lot of the issues he had last year.
Yeah.
And I said, how many games do you think they're going to win? You go, I don't know, I need to really drill down. And I go, now let me read you their schedule. And I read across the line, and you're like, wow, I can't find too many they're going to be favorites in. They have a brutal schedule. I don't know what they're going to do there. I don't think they're as bad as people say they are. I don't think Dallas is as good as people say they are. I think Dallas, they're rightfully a favorite in the game. They're at home.
Yeah.
They probably would be a bigger favorite had they beat Arizona.
Yeah.
It's only 7 last I looked. It probably would be maybe 8, I'm guessing, 8.5 maybe. But 7's an interesting number because 7.5 is a big deal.
Yep.
And so I don't, you'll have to see.
Yeah.
I know Billy Walters like to say what bet favorites early and underdogs late. The line tends to move more towards favorite. So if you like Dallas, laying 7's I'm not even talking about Survivor. Laying 7's probably not terrible. It's probably more likely to go to 7.5 than 6.5, but time will tell.
Eagles moved to -8 versus the Commanders, and then the Chargers are 5.5 over Vegas. And those were the 5 games that
spoke to you.
Yeah. Well, no, those are the 5 favorites. All the other games are 3 points or less.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota, Carolina, is that 4? Did you mention them?
No, I did not.
It's not a great spot exactly. I'm just saying Minnesota's on the road. Mm-hmm. I mean, Minnesota can't be as bad as 0-3 either.
Yeah.
They've also got a really tough schedule. Minnesota's had a lot of really tough games.
Yeah.
This is the first game they have that's not brutal in Carolina, but it's on the road.
Yeah, they've had some tough ones for sure.
I don't know, but you're right. I mean, it seems very likely we're going to end up with some mix of, the games you just mentioned. I mean, you start getting down to Pittsburgh, Houston. We thought Pittsburgh would be better. I mean, now, again, this is what's so tricky in the NFL. If we're looking team versus team, I don't know, maybe the Raiders are worse. So maybe Pittsburgh isn't that good. Or maybe the Raiders are slightly better than people think, and Pittsburgh is even better than that. Or you've just got the individual matchup factor, and where is Pittsburgh going to match up, like their DBs, versus the wide receivers of Houston and vice versa?
Yeah.
What are those matchups going to look like?
Well, we're definitely going to dig into all that for sure. And out of those 5-6 games that you mentioned, Dallas and KC are in there again. And those are
they're always going to be in there.
Those are ones that need to be saved.
It was so tough, even when I was trying to not even pay attention to Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so I'm looking, okay, if I take Dallas here, I don't want to take, we had a chart someplace, I don't remember. I don't want to take, say, almost maybe Philadelphia and Kansas City on the same entry. I can't remember if that was the combo or something like that. So I start looking down the season, like where are they both going to be like in the top 5 or 6 of favorites? Always.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like, I'm always going to want to use one of these two teams. I mean, that's the problem. It just is what it is. But sometimes you have to decide, is it better to save them for when everybody's going to use them, or try to use them when not everybody's going to use them? And it didn't work out for us this time, but I have no regrets on the pick. That's why we took Dallas last week and didn't wait. That's why we actually took, even though San Francisco's got some spots much later in the year, we knew we weren't going to take them this week, and we might have something on them. We knew they weren't going to be our primary focus this week when, it looks like 36% of the field may be on them, and it could be more.
Heck, if Arizona shows up this week, the pool might be done.
Everybody out there that's listening should just take San Francisco. They're the biggest favorite. Just take San Francisco.
San Francisco. They're great.
But it's true. I mean, that's the thing. If Arizona somehow shows up, it's
this thing might not make Thanksgiving.
You could lose another 40%.
Yeah, the pod could end early.
Yeah, we'll find something to talk about. Hockey. Well, preseason hockey bets.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, exactly. So some heavy favorites. It'd be interesting to see where everybody lands. We'll definitely be digging into those numbers and trying to come up with what our thoughts are on that. After 4:00, pop onto the X handle at Survivor Sweat. We'll go ahead and post what we think, where we're at, give you a little piece of our brain, and again, maybe right, maybe wrong, and hopefully we're just in and surviving.
And for those of you out there on X, for those of you that are fans of Circa, or even if you're not, you should go take a look at Jeffrey Benson's resignation letter out there on Circa, on X from Circa. It's really outstanding.
That was a huge troll.
I send my compliments to Jeff for that. That was really just spectacular.
Yeah, and I had mentioned to you that I was texting back and forth with him, and I'm like, shit, he never even mentioned anything.
I sent it to you. You're like, what?
Yeah, well, you kidding me? And then I started reading a little bit. I'm like, what are we talking about?
I think you told me you heard a rumor Derek Stevens heard about it from someone else via Twitter, and kind of, he really
shockingly enough, he was up late drinking, partying, and at a concert, and then he was getting like tons of texts about Jeff resigning.
Derek Stevens, man, for those of you that haven't met him, for a guy that owns a casino, he's about as down to earth as they come. He's a ton of fun.
He's an animal.
He's always he's an animal, that's for sure. I can't keep up with him.
Yeah, great dude.
All right. So everyone get your picks in. Make sure you get them in on time. Don't be one of those 7 or 8 that didn't get them in, because that never feels real good.
No.
And really just sit down, make your decisions, feel good about it. But you can pick a team you really want, or you can also take the other tact and pick a team you're really just trying to avoid. But just make sure you do have a strategy. Think it through, and you can't be results oriented. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, and on survivorsweat.com last week, somebody went in there and ask the question. And if you want to go on us on the platform, we'll answer it right here on the pod to the best of our ability. If you want to go on there and reach out to us, or go on the X Twitter handle for Survivor Sweat and post something. If you want to ask a question, if you want us to answer it live on the pod, we love to discuss this. I mean, this is the greatest football contest. Whether we're in, I prefer to be in, but whether we're in or we're out, we just love to talk about this.
We do. And look, we know the reality is the probability of winning this thing is so close to zero. Anyway, each year you come back, and yet we still come back, right? It's great. It's a great thrill. It's the most excitement you can have betting sports. You can have a single $1,000 entry, and you could effectively have no more money in it and have sports bets, sports action until week 9 or 10 sometimes.
Correct. Yeah.
On just that one entry. And then you have a shot to have a really big score when you win. So it's definitely
exciting.
Great. And if you're not here, obviously, using Survivor Sweat, using a proxy service, making sure that your picks get in on time is obviously critical too.
Yeah. It's a great one-stop shop. It's everything Circa Survivor. And so check it out. Check out the website. Let us know what you think. Like I said, we like to... we want to talk on the discussion board, and like I said, we just like to talk, and
I think they got a marketplace out there. So if some of you guys got talked into doing Survivor and you don't think it's as exciting as we do, go put it up there, sell it for $1,000. I'm sure I'll buy it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, yeah, give you a second or a third chance there,
exactly,
if you want,
which we could use.
Absolutely. All right, well. We will find out where we land at 4:00 on Saturday, and then.
Yep. How many people you think take Denver?
I think there'll be some.
There will be, I'm sure. 100? Over, under 100? Under. Over, under 40. There's my total. 40 and a half.
That's a good number. 30 was popping up, so
you'll take 20, the under 40 and a half?
I would take
the under.
We
shall see.
Yeah,
I'll bet you a beer. If you drink beer. I don't know. Probably.
Or tequila.
Tequila. Better.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you all for watching.
Yep. Until next week, and hope you survive. I hope we survive.
I hope we survive too. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Looking for Survivor strategy articles? Did you lose your last entry on a Survivor contest and wish you could rebuy? Check out our marketplace and you may find what you need. Head over to survivorsweat.com for all things Survivor. And we'll see you next week for the next Survivor Sweat podcast.